Welcome to the Bourbon Friday Show. We're talking business and bourbon. I'm your host, Nick Niehaus, and today I'm talking to Mark Tatgenhorst, who is the director of GEOSAURUS over at T-Rex. So, Mark, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, excited to talk to you.
First time on TV.
I know you told me that, so we'll be gentle with you today. I promise. So nothing too intense. So let's start with an easy one then, right?
Yeah,
so just
sure.
what is GEOSAURUS? Tell us about it.
GEOSAURUS is a tech innovation center that we're building within the T-Rex building.
Okay.
It's going to be an environment that brings government, industry, academia, and startups together to solve some of the world's hardest geospatial intelligence or information problems.
Very cool. And this is obviously tied to the fact that the NGA headquarters is moving to the downtown St. Louis area, right?
Certainly having a government partner as part of this is important for developing this and growing this ecosystem.
Cool. So is that where the idea for GEOSAURUS originated? Was because of the NGA, or was this kind of a separate thing?
Well, certainly it was a catalyst to get the ecosystem thinking about geospatial information. There's a lot of people that were involved on the academic side, the industry side. But once NGA announced their new campus in 2016, that was going to be on the north side, that really was a catalyst to get everybody in the ecosystem working together, geospatial ecosystem working together. So it's been a great opportunity for everyone.
Very cool. Well, and I remember when I first became a member at T-Rex years ago, and one of the cool things about it was that it was kind of that first moment that there was a way to organize all these different startups, and they were here and they were all working on their ideas, but they were all kind of separated, right? So it sounds like that's kind of the heart of GEOSAURUS as well. And I think you mentioned that this is the only one of its kind, like in the world.
Correct.
Maybe,
as far as I know, this is the only geospatial focused innovation, geospatially focused innovation center.
Very cool.
So,
all right.
It's exciting. I mean, one of the big things about St. Louis that's unique across the differs from other places in the world is you have this perfect storm of civic, industry, academia, and government all working together to create this environment that makes this the geospatial center of excellence in the world.
Wow.
So it's a very committed effort, and it's super exciting to be a part of it.
Very cool. Well, so what kind of things, obviously there's a lot of different types of people and organizations that will be present here. What kind of stuff will we expect to see come out of GEOSAURUS? So, I mean, are we looking at product development, or what do we expect in there?
I think mostly you'll see two things. One, I think you'll see a lot of things on the service side, because where people make their mark in the geospatial industry is really on the service side. But the other thing that you're going to see is a talent pipeline. One of the goals of the geospatial ecosystem is that we create this center for excellence. And so if we're going to do that, one, we have to develop the talent in the St. Louis region, and secondly, we have to be able to sustain that. So we have to get to those K through 12 students and really give them the basic geospatial information background and allow them to correlate that with a tangible career in the future. So,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're going down to the K level, even like what kind of stuff are you exposing kids to in school that helps them work toward those careers?
So the basic geography lessons that we have a lot of games within the community that exposes them to where things are geographically. As we start working into the high school students, we're going to look for real projects to put them on. Mapping infrastructure in the St. Louis region. Trying to prepare base foundation data for disaster preparedness. I mean, these are all ideas that we have in mind for those. So a lot of things. We're looking at geocamps to having. So people can just get exposed at different levels and really get them excited about the industry.
Kind of get them into that pipeline for future careers. Very cool. Well, so you mentioned that St. Louis was already kind of a hotbed for this industry. Where did that come from? Is it because McDonnell Douglas was here for a long time, or where do you think that how did that originate?
So it started, I think, because of NGA being here for geospatial.
Sure.
And then we had, just a number of people who supported NGA in the community, and then recently, within, I would say, the last 5 years, there's just been a committed effort from all the entities that I mentioned earlier, civic, academia, industry, and the government, to really focus our efforts and really drive partnerships that maybe were non-traditional in the past. So
gotcha.
it's kind of it's an interesting dynamic that
well,
I've
great.
not seen in any other industries.
Really? Okay. Well, it's exciting news for the city of St. Louis, obviously, as well.
Yeah,
So.
they should be very excited.
Cool. So I want to ask you a little bit about your background, because
Sure.
I know you worked at the NGA for 33 years. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, technically 32 years, 10 months, and 15 days.
Okay. Well, you got to be accurate.
That's
I
right.
appreciate that.
So so I moved here from Eastern Ohio.
Okay.
And in 1986, and started with the predecessor of NGA, which was the Defense Mapping Agency.
Okay.
So worked in a variety of different technical and leadership jobs there. At one point, I went down to U.S. Central Command and U.S. Special Operations Command, and did a tour there, working with the warfighter, the major commands.
Wow.
And then came back, but majority of my time has been in research and development and prototyping. So it's been pretty exciting career.
Very cool.
I've had 3 deployments, which were really rewarding. So
That's great.
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, well, I know some of the stuff you worked on at the NGA is probably, you can't talk about it, right? I mean, kind of some secretive stuff there. But tell me, maybe a little bit more broadly for those who are watching that don't know anything about the NGA. How would you kind of describe the NGA as an organization?
So the NGA, the director wears 2 hats for NGA. We're a combat support agency, and we're part of the intelligence community.
Okay.
So we support NGA supports a broad range of customer bases, from warfighters to policymakers. So with geospatial information, we're the lead agency.
Gotcha. Okay. And when we talk about geospatial, we're predominantly talking about mapping. Is that where it starts, or what other things does it apply to?
Anything. When we use the term geospatial, we talk about any data that has a location or coordinate attribute to it. So it's everything that we have as a sensor. So our phones, when we take pictures, they're geo-referenced.
Sure. It plays a part in most of the stuff you use every day.
Everything we do is coordinate based. So it tells us where we're at, where we're going, how we interact with one another, how do we get from point A to point B. So
gotcha. Well,
everything is geospatially driven.
Yeah, very important stuff, obviously.
Exactly.
Well, I have to ask this question, just kind of off the cuff here. I remembered the fact that we now have a space military branch, right? This was just recently announced, right? How does the NGA kind of fit into the future there? Is that same thing at all, or?
Well, there'll obviously be a support mechanism.
So it's a separate military branch that you'll be,
or
NGA being a
some
support
of
of.
the other major commands.
Gotcha.
CENTCOM, SOCOM.
All right, that makes sense. Well, I want to get back to GEOSAURUS a little bit, because that's the new job, that's the future, right? So as the director, tell me a little bit about your role with GEOSAURUS.
So my role is managing the day-to-day operations and building the strategic vision for how GEOSAURUS is going to operate.
Okay.
So within GEOSAURUS, we're going to have co-working space, we're going to have innovation space, we're going to have academic space.
Okay.
But really, it's an open space that fosters collaboration between the entities that I talk about.
Sure.
The startup community, the industry, academia, and just try to bring those and fosters an environment that we can be innovative and support the entrepreneurs and really solve hard geospatial intelligence problems and develop talent along the way.
Sure. Well, that's really important, obviously, bringing people together to work on things that maybe wouldn't have had a chance to interact with each other otherwise, right? So who are you looking for? So if you're, you've got some people watching right now, what kinds of startups, or how are you drawing people in, and who are you trying to attract?
So who we're trying to attract are those startups that are looking to kickstart their geospatial type enterprise. So, for instance, if it's a collector on the UAS side, UAV drone, if it's people working in artificial intelligence or computer vision, that we can, apply to geospatially related problems. I think all of those are
so it's fairly broad. It sounds like there's a lot of types of businesses.
Yeah. So the problems that we're trying to solve on the geospatial realm are problems that people across different technology sectors are trying to solve. Big data, not enough analysts to look at the data. We need to be able to protect the data. So the cyber aspect. So really, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cyber, those types of aspects where maybe you don't think that they apply to, a geospatial industry. We'd be very interested to have you in the GEOSAURUS and applying your expertise to some of the problems that we're going to be facing.
Interesting. Okay. So there's definitely a lot of startups and founders that could be a great fit.
Absolutely.
Are you drawing most of these companies from the local area? Are they coming from St. Louis, or are you bringing people in from outside the state too?
No, that's the intent, and that's the focus of T-Rex, is really to revitalize the St. Louis economic development. So,
very cool. So very aligned in missions, obviously.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, GEOSAURUS falls under the umbrella of T-Rex.
Sure. Well, I mean, yeah, you're in T-Rex. So
that's right.
You better have a similar mission, right?
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
It's an exciting time. I don't know. It's really good when you see people who don't have any experience in the geospatial or geospatial background realize that it's not a siloed discipline, that it spans across multiple tech sectors, and when you can see it, see the light bulb go on, it's pretty exciting stuff. So
that's great. Well, and I know you said construction's still underway, right? So when are we expecting it to open up?
So construction is supposed to be completed in December of this year. We anticipate getting in all the hardware and software architecture, as well as some of the content built in there. Will probably take another month. So I'm guessing around the January timeframe.
All right, so not too much longer. Yeah. Sounds good. And I know you guys haven't really waited to get started, right? You already got events going on.
Right.
So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So on once a month on Wednesday evenings, we have an event called GEOSAURUS Unleashed.
Okay.
Where we have a different theme every month to focus on one of the disciplines or subject matter related to the geospatial industry. And so on September 11th, we're glad to host the UAS community. So we're going to have representatives from FEMA, NGA, and a startup company to talk about the different challenges that they're facing in the UAS community, where they think they're going, and the benefits to the geospatial environment as a whole. So
cool. And is that open to the public, or should we RSVP for that?
It is open to the public, and there's RSVPs for it. And it's going to be held on the 5th floor at T-Rex. It's really exciting.
So if somebody wants to sign up, go on the website, or where should they register?
Go on the T-Rex website.
T-Rex, okay.
They'll have a link to it.
Cool. All right. Well, very cool. Well, we're going to transition here in just a second. I do have one more personal question for you. I'm a little birdie, so to speak, before the show told me to ask you about your estate sale finds on the weekends here. So I mean, I heard some good stories here.
That is one of me and my wife's passions, is to get out on the weekends and look for hidden treasures in estate sales and auctions. So
So what have you found? What's some of the more interesting stuff you've dug up?
So I'm a product of the 70s and 80s. So it's really neat to see some of the Sony Walkmans and some of the Polaroid Instamatics that I used to use. So I collect those. So,
What's that kind of stuff worth nowadays?
Condition
matters,
ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure one of those Polaroid Instamatics are probably worth $20, $25 range. But if you get a rare Sony Walkman, I've gotten $300 for one. So,
really? Okay.
So
what's the best ROI you've ever found in terms of what you bought something for and sold it for?
So I found a vintage 1975 motorcycle helmet that I bought for 20 and sold for 800.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So that's that was my biggest.
That's pretty
find.
good. That's
so,
a good return on that $20.
Yeah, it's and it's fun doing it. So.
Yeah. Well, where do you? I mean, if someone wants to get started looking for this stuff, what just head out on the weekend looking for sales or?
No, estatesales.net. They have all the estate sales that are listed in the St. Louis, around the world, country actually.
Really? All right.
Yeah.
You just go to the list.
Just narrow it down to St. Louis and.
Easy enough. Yeah. Something to do on the weekends. Yeah. I like it.
Kids make fun of me, but
hey, if you're making money and you're enjoying it, I mean, there's nothing there to make fun of in my mind.
About the money, it's just the fun of finding, some treasure.
Yeah, well, it sounds interesting. Yeah, you always never know what you're going to find, I'm sure. Very cool. All right. Well, we do have a couple minutes left. And so what we're going to do is transition a little bit to bring in Eric onto the show. And Eric is the founder of Bourbon Friday. And he's going to tell us what we are drinking today. So what do we got?
So we are drinking Woodford Reserve. And primary reason this is here is because you told me it was your favorite. But I did look in a little bit because I like to do just some research on the guest and try and relate it back. So while certainly Brown-Forman, which is the giant company that owns Woodford, uses geospatial information for things like crops, trees, limestone water, and all of that, no question it is done. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. Couldn't find any information on that. But specifically, they for sure are what they're doing is using our phones to track us, collect information on us, as well as like geofencing, collecting data on like people buying their products and all of that. I also did find in a doctoral dissertation in geospatial, in the acknowledgments, somebody had thanked one of their mentors and going over their research over a bottle of Woodford Reserve. Hey. So maybe it's not just you in the geospatial community.
So I think a good geospatial project is, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to take the Bourbon Trail through Kentucky, but I would highly recommend it to anyone. And of course, Woodford Reserve is on the trail. Mm-hmm. My daughter happens to live in eastern Kentucky, so every time we drive over there through from Louisville through Lexington area, we see and we've made several stops on that.
Yeah, and there's a project called ArcGIS, and they've done part of the Bourbon Trail. Woodford wasn't on there, but they've done part of the Bourbon Trail where they're doing story maps.
Yeah. So what a great tie to geospatial information.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Good work as always, Eric. We do have a minute left. Do we have any events coming up?
You bet. So of course, with the holiday next week, there's not nearly as many events, but we do want to say on Tuesday, the applications are due for the Startup Connection. This is the largest celebration in the startup community, happens on November 6th. So on Tuesday, those applications are due, and that is specifically for the actual startups themselves. So if you want your startup to be featured there, you need to apply for that. On Thursday, we of course have Venture Cafe. Highlights from that are pitfalls of starting up with legal issues with Hush Blackwell, which is a law firm here. Computer vision to read analog gauges on a factory floor by Prepare AI. So basically they used IoT cameras to be able to read analog measuring tools on factory floors.
Oh, interesting.
And so they're going to talk about that. And then in addition to that, there's a panel discussion called Funding for Growth at Every Stage of the Business Lifecycle by ACG St. Louis. And these are, I think it's from a pretty diverse group of companies. I think PenPath is one of the companies that's on there. And then Friday, we're back here at Covo for another great Bourbon Friday. We have Darcella Craven from the Veterans Business Resource Center. And if you've met Darcella, she's amazing. She's a T-Rex member as well. And we're just going to be talking and have a good time here.
Yeah,
and then a little bit further out, coming up on September 12th is Kinesis 2019, which is the annual celebration for Venture Cafe. Venture Cafe is, of course, a nonprofit, and this is sort of their large fundraising event. And actually, we are going to be there recording or broadcasting, creating content as part of their Podcasters Row.
Doing what we do. I like it. Should be fun.
That's awesome.
Cool. Well, Eric, thank you as always for joining us. Appreciate it. Mark, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Can I come back?
Well, of course. Yeah, you're always welcome. We're always here drinking bourbon on Friday.
Yeah,
So
we're here every Friday.
For those of you tuning in, we do want to thank you for watching us today. We do have a couple of organizations to thank. That would be Kovo for hosting us. We really appreciate that every single week. Thank you to EQ for streaming our program through your platform. And then, of course, thank you to both Vanessa Lobo and Ian Brown behind the scenes, who are our producers this week on our episode. Thanks for tuning in, and join us again next Friday at 4:30 for the Bourbon Friday Show. We'll see you then.